Welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me through Skype is Ralph Valenti for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. So, the wrestling industry is moving on, unlike the NBA, unlike the MLB, the NHL, basically everybody else in the world shutting down due to coronavirus, but yet WWE and AEW live on. But Cody Rhodes actually had to say something on Twitter about this because a fan asked him, should storylines progress knowing that we're going to have limited audiences or empty arenas like we saw on SmackDown? Here's was his response, Ralph. A lot of folks are sitting at home, some scared, all bored. Just like real community leaders have come forward and entertainment leaders have to follow suit safely, people need to laugh, cry, forget, love, all the good stuff. My personal opinion, we shouldn't hold back. Do you agree with Cody Rhodes' tweet here?
Yeah, I got to say at this point, I definitely agree with him, especially because a lot of people who enjoy professional wrestling, this is kind of their outlet. You know, right now we're in a really weird time where there's not many sports. It kind of seems like everybody's standing on pins and needles, and you know, it's really hard to escape the realness of the whole COVID-19 thing and everything that's associated with it. You got a lot of people living in high anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and the fact that companies like the WWE, companies like AEW, you know, companies like that are deciding to move forward, as long as they can do it safely for the talent and everybody that's going to be involved in this, then I'm okay with it. You know, I think when you look at, you know, the way WWE has chosen to do it with the empty arenas, if AEW chooses to go that route, minimizing the amount of people that are coming into contact with one another, while it's certainly very surreal and different than anything we've ever seen before, they're still putting out content. They're still producing storylines and moving forward with all of that stuff, which is good for us because I think, especially in a time like now where there's so much uncertainty, people need that outlet. People need something, whether it's professional wrestling, other TV shows. They need to get away from this. They need to be able
Totally
to put
agree.
their phone down and stop reading into all the hysteria surrounding this. You know, not to say that it's not real and it's not something that should be taken seriously, because of course it should be, which is why we're Skyping right now rather than me coming there and being in our studio. But people need an outlet. People need a break. People need to ease their mind, even if it's 4 to 5 hours a week of watching professional wrestling. So I commend them for doing this and definitely think that as long as they can do it smartly and safely, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I understand where that fan was coming from, though, where he's questioning, should we progress storylines rather than just have match, especially because this coming Wednesday was supposed to be the reveal of the Exalted One. If that is in front of an empty arena, you know, how do we know whether or not that falls flat or if it worked other than what social media is saying? That's really our only barometer of this. And seeing that it was going to be in Rochester originally, a lot of people are saying it's going to be Luke Harper. And I am one that actually agrees with that. I do think it's going to end up being Luke Harper, not Matt Hardy. We obviously know it's not going to be Lance Archer either. I definitely think it diminishes the impact of that reveal of the Exalted One.
Yeah.
Some other aspects of storylines, like what's going on with Archer and Cody, that could progress without fans. You know, the stuff with Hangman Page, Omega, the Bucks, that could progress without fans. You don't want it to, but you know, what if, you know, it gets to a point that AEW, they do like a Being the Elite type episode where, you know, they have their backstage segments and still progress storylines that way. Heck, for those that watch wrestling in the 80s know Glow or have seen the Netflix series Glow, they progress storylines with pre-produced packages for a couple weeks. Why don't you just do that and have some matches in the empty arena? I think that could work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from, because especially now in a time that's so different, you know, the crowd, the live audience, all of that gives such a buzz off. It's definitely something that the talent themselves feed off of. And especially a big moment like where they're going to be debuting the Exalted One, especially a situation like that, you want a crowd there. You want to hear the reaction. But obviously, if it falls flat, if it's somebody that's not expected, if it's anybody other than Matt Hardy, Luke Harper, or Lance Archer, I think people are probably going to be disappointed. But either way, so, you know, the audience, they all play into that. That obviously helps with the storylines and the impact of it and making certain moments feel special. I mean, you can compare it going back to like WrestleMania 3. If Hogan slammed Andre in an empty arena, would it have
Right.
the same impact? Probably not. Would Dustin and Cody have the same impact if it was in an empty arena? Probably not. But it doesn't mean that they should stop the storylines and kind of go off course. Because, worst case scenario, this goes on for a couple of months. I don't really know how long. I'm just kind of going based on what I've heard on the news. Best case scenario, it's not nearly as bad as they predicted, and hopefully, I don't know, somebody finds some type of vaccine for it. I that's just me speculating and hoping for the best, and life can go on, and we can get people back to the arenas and get fans back to enjoying professional wrestling live. But I think that based on where they currently are, the fact that WWE, AEW, and all the other organizations that are going to try to do this safely, they shouldn't necessarily stop and put all the storylines on hold. I mean, we
Right.
can still enjoy it on TV. It's just going to be a little bit different. At least we still have wrestling to enjoy, unlike NBA, NHL. It sucks. I mean, anybody who's heavily invested in sports, it's not a good time for them. But even though it's an empty arena type situation, we still have that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've seen some news that there's someone in Canada that has isolated the COVID-19 virus. So maybe
Yep.
that's the first step into vaccination. And, with everybody self-isolating, social distancing, for at least 2 weeks. I know my wife, her school that she works at, they're closed down for 2 weeks. So I think the spread is definitely going to diminish within the 2 weeks. Does that mean that WrestleMania goes as planned? I don't know. Hopefully that's the case. I think as long
I
as the
doubt
spread,
it.
as long as the spread isn't as bad as it's been, but at the same time, postponing it's not a bad idea because we're talking about storylines here. A lot of those matches right now aren't announced. We have the big ones, it seems, with Goldberg and Roman, Cena and Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton and Edge, AJ and The Undertaker. But then after that, we don't really know the plans. Like it seemed like on SmackDown this week, Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan seem to be starting a program. You want to rush that 3 weeks in empty arenas? I don't think so. Let's, if you can do it and everyone can get there safely, sure. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Let's postpone it a week, maybe 2. And I think that's going to benefit from WWE's case.
Yeah. I think it's wishful thinking to think that WrestleMania is going to go on as planned with 80 plus, however many thousands of people going to Tampa
Yeah.
for that. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Vince bought himself another week to try and put a plan together to figure something out. But it's either going to take place there in an empty arena or at a performance center, or, like you suggested, postponing it, which I think ultimately is maybe the best decision, but it's tough. I mean, you've invested a lot in these storylines. You look at Raw, you look at Randy Orton, you look at the Edge feud. I mean, that's probably one of the hottest storylines going into WrestleMania, and bringing Edge back, having him return from his hiatus with his neck injury, all of that can kind of fall flat if there's no fans there,
Right.
So it stinks that we're in the situation we're in, but it's outside of anybody's control, and just something that we kind of have to live with and adjust with as we go along here.
The one thing they do benefit with if they postpone, Ralph, is the fact that it's going to be at Raymond James Stadium. What the heck is going on at Raymond James Stadium a month after when WrestleMania was originally planned? I mean, there's no other big events that happen really at Raymond James Stadium other than maybe a stadium concert. I think Guns N' Roses is going to be there, but that's like August. So why not postpone it a month and progress those storylines and benefit from this? So, and you know what? The empty arena thing for SmackDown and Raw, it was a little weird, I must say, but the ratings seem to have gone up this week with SmackDown, Ralph.
Yeah.
Total viewership was up to an average of 2.58 million people. And say what you want about the weirdness of the audience, the show was pretty decent, especially what ended the show, that segment with John Cena and Bray Wyatt. So maybe it would have been better with an audience, but that segment was awesome. What'd you think of Cena's comment with him saying that the future's in McIntyre and Ciampa and Velveteen Dream and not Bray Wyatt?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think it definitely strikes a chord with, probably rubbing a certain amount of the fan base the wrong way. But I think you see a lot of this. When you hear people who have left the company, people who feel like they should have been a main eventer and never necessarily got to that point. The first thing they're always quick to do is to point out, oh, I didn't make it to the top because this person doesn't like me. That person didn't like me. I didn't quite win the championship because this guy threw me under the bus. And one of the people that has, whether you want to say a reputation or a false narrative surrounding him is Cena. When you hear a lot of interviews, whether it's, former guys that have left, guys that are currently there saying that, Cena always hogs up the top spot. He holds people down. He holds people back. There's a lot of backstage politics and all that stuff. You hear that about guys like Cena. You hear that about guys like Triple H. You hear that just about any guy that's ever made it to the top of, and not just WWE, but mostly in any company. There's always the backstage politics and people that are lazier or not willing to put the effort and work in, who are going to point to the people at the top and say, oh, well, they didn't actually earn it. Well, guess what? Cena's going to use that to his advantage, and he's going to make it seem really real. I'm not saying Bray Wyatt is lazy. I'm not saying that everything Cena said was true, but it's definitely going to strike a chord with a certain amount of the fan base. And I thought that it's a different take on a really good situation. I loved Bray Wyatt's whole promo after that, and I loved how he ended it, where he literally told him, "What? Let me in."
Let me in.
Whatever he ended up saying. Yeah. So, I think he said, you don't even know what you're in for.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great segment. Granted, it was a little weird that it was an empty arena, but they were able to deliver in a big way.
I totally agree with you. And I think a lot of people were taking Cena's promo a little too literal and saying that, oh, Bray Wyatt was buried. And especially the line where Cena was saying, why don't they say he's buried when he has big losses? And people were like, well, because he's established. And, and I get that, but you're taking it too literal. Basically, what John Cena was saying was Bray Wyatt talks all this big game and never wins the big one, whether that's the way he's booked or however the case may be. That's part of the story. And that's what Bray Wyatt's trying to fix in his career.
Yeah.
Like, he had all these big losses and now he's going to win everything back. And that's what this is all about. So
yeah.
I loved it.
I loved it too. That's another thing too. You think WWE doesn't realize that there's a certain percentage of the fan base that's pissed off that Bray Wyatt lost the title or feel a certain way. And this is where Cena's kind of a genius. So Cena's always been a polarizing character, and the guys that love him and the guys that follow him are going to stand by his side until the day he retires. But the people that hate him, granted, a good majority of them right now, I think, probably respect him. And I'm one of them. I'm not a huge Cena fan, but I respect him for everything he's done. And I understand his position in the company. So the fact that he's saying things like that and using that type of language and that type of conversation and narrative to progress the storyline means people are going to get pissed off. They're going to be happy. Some people will be happy he said stuff like this because they're going to think it's true. And he's trying to invoke emotion, which is something that is missing in a lot of feuds and a lot of promos. People go out there, they cut the status promo, and it's just like, I'm the best, I'm this, I'm that. And they talk about all their accolades, but there's no emotion in it. There's no feeling. You're not left to feel like, happy, mad, sad, whatever.
But
Cena's really good at that.
Part of that is that they're scripted, the promos, and guys are just spitting out what they're given. And I think now, and I've said this a while back, and it's been reported that there's less scripted promos. It's more bullet point. And this SmackDown, they're saying that Vince wasn't there. It was run by Triple H and Bruce Pritchard and some other guys in the back. You could feel like the authenticness of the episode where Authenticity. Thank you. Authenticity. Whatever the freaking word is. Who cares? It just felt more real. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to get at. It felt more real. Even Roman Reigns' promo. Damn it. Yeah. Even Roman Reigns' interview with Michael Cole felt more real.
Loved it.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
And I think
I love the fact that Roman came out there and he said, you know what, I can go and main event every single night, everywhere, all over the world, all over the country. And granted, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that he can just walk out there and say he's going to challenge for the title, but I think that's a valid point. You know, he can go main event everywhere else, but he can't main event WrestleMania. Why not? I mean, he's certainly one of the top guys there, whether people like it or not. So, yeah, I didn't have an issue with his promo. I thought the show was really good. I liked the way that Michael Cole and Triple H were able to interact with one another.
Oh, Triple H was awesome.
Actually really good in his role. I actually really enjoyed the show. I thought Daniel Bryan and Cesaro had a really good match. I'm all for them pushing a guy like Drew Gulak. So, you know, yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was really good.
I think the low point of SmackDown, though, and I think a lot of people are not really happy about this. Some are excited. I know you texted me as soon as the news went out. You weren't happy with it either. Is Mojo Rawley confirmed that Rob Gronkowski has signed with WWE? Good move or bad move?
You know, usually I come on the show and a lot of times I'll say that even though I don't agree with things, I understand why they're doing it. Again, I think I understand this. I mean, yes, signing a guy like Gronk and giving him a contract is going to get a lot of attention, especially a lot of attention outside of the WWE fan base. So the WWE universe, you know, Gronk is a guy that is certainly a future Hall of Famer. But when you look at it this way, I mean, he was on the New England Patriots and the Patriot fans were, you know, in love with him. He was great. He did great things for them, but Patriots is also one of the more hated organizations in all of football. Sorry if people don't agree with that, but that's honestly the truth.
Oh, it's true. Just
like the Yankees, I'm a Yankee fan, and I'm realistic about it. You know, people hate the Yankees, and that's fine. It's just how it is. I get why they're doing it, but you know, in 2020, especially now when you have so much competition with AEW and everything else going on in the world, do you really need to go to lengths like this to try and attract people to your product? I'd rather see them focus on finding the next Stone Cold Steve Austin or the next big thing or the next big star than sign a guy like Rob Gronkowski. Now, he can go out there and be amazing. I'm not saying he can't because he's a good athlete, but I don't think that's realistically. I don't think it's going to happen.
Let me ask you this. Now, I understand one of the big difference between one of these two is one had wrestling training, the other one didn't. But from a character's perspective and how they act in real life, what's the difference between Rob Gronkowski and Matt Riddle? They're essentially the same. Superior athletes with their backgrounds in, you know, Gronk in football, Matt Riddle in MMA. You know, they're laid back, possibly marijuana influenced personalities. You know, what's the difference? What's the difference?
So, there's a few differences. So one of the things that is most notable to me is I think that when you have somebody who comes in from the UFC like Ronda Rousey or Matt Riddle, you know, they have a natural aura around them. Like they're an actual ass kicker. Now, I'm not saying Rob Gronkowski can't go out there and, you know, beat the crap out of half the guys on the roster. He very well may be able to, but you know, it just seems like for whatever reason, MMA and UFC, like when you're a bigger star there, like it's more relatable and it's more accepted than a guy coming over from the NFL.
But so many guys come from the NFL or the NCAA.
But I think the difference here's probably the biggest difference. Matt Riddle came from the indie scene and was, you know, probably one of the more well-known guys in the in indie wrestling before he made it to NXT, and he's kind of working his way up. The problem I see is I think there's a certain percentage of the fan base that's naturally going to reject Gronk because they're going to take him and they're going to, like right now, he's going to go on SmackDown because of his name. He's going to be given certain opportunities that other guys aren't going to be afforded or may never get, you know? So there's always going to be a certain percentage of the fan base that's going to reject that. They did it with Ronda Rousey. They'll do it with him. They do it with certain people like Floyd Mayweather when he was brought in. You have to have a certain type of personality that, you know, the fans are willing to embrace. You know, if they brought in a guy like Conor McGregor for a one-off, it'd probably go over pretty well because Conor's really liked across the world for the most part, and he's a big draw. But a guy like Gronkowski, I don't know. I'll wait to see what happens. I'm not ecstatic about it. I don't know.
Here's what I see. I agree for the most part. Like, do they really need to bring in Gronk? But you always say this is a business, and your business is trying to draw in viewers, draw in ratings, draw in money. A guy like Gronk, I think, can do that, especially when everyone talks about the casual fans, the lapsed fans that are gone. A lot of those lapsed fans that are gone are probably sports fans in nature and know who Rob Gronkowski is. Right. One of the things that I say all the time about one of the big problems in professional wrestling today is they lack character. They're too much focused on what is going on in the ring rather than telling the story before, during, and after the matches. This guy here is a walking character. And as long as you let him, give him some bullet points on to talk about, I think it could work. Have a guy, they got so many experienced wrestlers there that can teach him what to do. It's not like he's going in there and is going to have a main event match in 3 weeks at WrestleMania. That, if that's the case, then I'm like, yeah, this is totally stupid. This isn't Lawrence Taylor against Bam Bam Bigelow at WrestleMania 11. All we know is he signed with WWE. The reports are saying he's going to have some spot at WrestleMania. Now, is that a tag team match with Mojo Rawley and 2 other guys? Or is it going to be something like what we saw, Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey versus Triple H and Stephanie? Who knows? Who knows? But I think if they play their cards right with Gronkowski, this is going to be a huge hit for WWE for the positive, I think. But
do you think he should go right to the main roster, or do you think he should work his way up through NXT?
Ronda Rousey didn't go through NXT. Ronda Rousey didn't.
Yeah.
So
but again, when you look at that, I mean, she had a few losses coming out of UFC, but before that, she was billed as the baddest woman on the planet. So I don't know.
But
we'll see what happens.
Gronk is coming out of, several injuries in the NFL, and he wasn't the dominating Gronk that we remember in the NFL. He wasn't Gronk, the tight end that was the best tight end in the league. He retired because he was injured too much. So, and that's the other thing you could play into it. Does he get injured? Is he injury prone in the WWE? Because this is not something, as everyone says, it's fake. It's not fake. It's predetermined. Injuries happen. He could get injured just as easily as here in the WWE as he did in the NFL. And there's less padding in WWE. Yeah. So, but, we'll see. I think time will tell whether or not this is a good move or a bad move. But I do think at the end, if they play their cards right, they saw what happened with Tyson Fury and Cain Velasquez. If they right the wrongs from those two things, Gronk will be a huge success, I think. So, but he could just be there to sell a match at SummerSlam in August. Or he could be there to be the next Rock. Who knows? Until he steps into the ring. So let us know what you guys think of the shows ending up in empty arenas, what you guys thought of SmackDown last Friday, and Gronk heading to WWE in the comments below. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti via Skype, my name's Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.